I don't think I think it was okay. I don't, definitely Walls didn't necessarily move the ball a lot, but he didn't blow up the ball. But he also got some effective hits, including closing with calling out JD Vance for you know his answer on January 6th. So, what was your initial thought on the debate, and what's your overall reaction to the debate?
Yeah, I think I was texting you kind of updates as it was going on. I kind of had a feeling this would be a wash, and it was. JD Vance, despite his atrocious policies and everything, not the worst speaker in the world, and he definitely certainly knows how to fight and argue. And Tim Walz, I told you this last week, and we can revisit, but I told you last week, Tim Walz, the folksy kind of malarkey and the quick talk and the rebuttals, that stuff doesn't play well in a debate. You need prepared answers and you need proper rebuttals to certain things. And I thought that he would at least struggle until it got to the point where it was a little bit back and forth, and I think that's what ended up happening. Walls was either he was nervous or he just was again isn't the greatest debater of all time, and that was pretty apparent. And JD Vance, I think, looked competent and looked fine compared to the person that's leading his ticket. But I will say I was a little disappointed in the fact like they asked him about the this is a non-story, but the Vietnam thing and the fact that he wasn't even prepared with a better answer than what he had. I felt was like, okay, what are we talking about? Like, do you know this was going to come up? And I thought his debate team, prep team should have prepared him better. But I thought 95% of the time, John, I was like, this is a wash. Tim looked fine. JD looked fine. Nobody's going to remember this. It was boring. Honestly, pretty remarkably policy focused on. It wasn't jabs back and forth. Guys agreed up with each other on certain things. And we probably learned more as a country in that debate than we did the presidential debate just because how focused on policy it was. But I did think the debates, as you know, are won and lost on a single moment. The Trump debate with Kamala, he lost it because the biggest moment from that was the eating the dogs and eating the cats, and that's why he lost that debate. In this debate, leave it up to the football coach John to throw a hail mary in the fourth quarter. Not that he needed it to win. To me, it was a wash. It was a tie. But for him to get JD Vance to openly admit that he wouldn't or didn't accept the 2020 election results, that Donald Trump did not lose the election, and hinting that he wouldn't accept the 2024 loss or certify a future loss, won the debate for Tim Walz because that's all people talked about after. Say what you want about focus groups, right? CNN had him, and MSNBC had him, and that's the thing that most people were talking about. I think and I'm very bullish on this. And people could disagree because the economy was worse in 2022 than it is now, and people didn't vote for the economy. In 2022, the biggest two issues on the ballot were democracy and abortion rights. And granted, you could argue that Roe just happened; it was fresh on people's minds. But I think the two biggest issues in this country right now are democracy and abortion rights, or just reproductive freedom. And Tim Walz won both of those points, and I think that's ultimately why he won the debate. But again, I think JD looked normal, and maybe his approval and his favorability went up, so maybe that helps him. But again, nobody's really voting for the vice president. But I think JD had a good night, and Tim had a good night, and I think the fact that the election thing came at the end, I think is going to be the lasting moment.
Yeah, I think I'll give Walls the advantage for one reason. Walls got the viral clip. There's nothing that happened in this debate, even Walls's sloppiness and awkwardness. Nothing made for a good viral hit on Waltz Harris or Harris Waltz. Um, JD gave Harris Waltz a viral clip with his response. So when we think overall performance, yeah, maybe evenly matched. But again, are we truly evenly matched? This in many ways this is very similar to the, of course, Walz way outperformed Biden, but it's very similar to the Biden Trump debate from the standpoint of um but for some stylistic things, um Waltz had a better substantive debate. You know, JD presented well, but he lied his ass off. So you have a situation where, depending by what criteria you're judging it, Um, I won't deny what give a lot about people pause about Walz's performance, but just like we talk about with the Biden Trump debate, substantively, the Walz actually beat Vance. And the thing is that if you're sitting there lying, you're sitting there basically. Your job is to demonster yourself, which was JD's job. Um, is that really, he didn't move the ball? Put it this way, to your point, and we talked about the Hail Mary. Waltz got a punch in. Waltz landed a punch. I don't think JD landed one punch. And don't forget, in addition to the Waltz landing the punch, JD also had the really embarrassing moment of complaining that he was being fact checked, which I think is a potentially second viral moment. So I think overall, probably in the big scheme of thing a wash. Although I also saw that while they both improved some numbers, I think that JD Vance is so far behind that his improvements only took him so far, and Waltz's improvements even made him better. So you still have a situation where um, it wasn't a knockout punch, but the other thing, and it's something that we've talked about with a, I'm sure you and I have not talked about directly, but I'm sure you think the same thing is most people, especially the partisans, and my girlfriend Patty said this to me. Uh, they want one things, the undecideds want something else, and the number one job that Waltz had, and for lack of for also JD had, was they weren't supposed to murder each other. It was Waltz's job was to attack Trump and protect Kamala. Vance's job was to attack Kamala and protect Trump. I think, given that thing, I think uh, Waltz did a much better job if you look at that criteria. Because most people think they should have been beating the hell out of each other. Now, I don't like how much Walz went ahead and was very complimentary, and tried to find some common cause with JD. But think about it, that might be effective with the undecided voters.
Yeah, I think you brought up two points at the end here. I want to touch on. I think the job of the vice. I had an argument with somebody on Twitter because they were like, "Man, JD Vance is mopping the floor with him." I was like, "I don't think you're seeing what I'm seeing, right?" He looks competent, yes, but the job of the vice presidential debate is to attack the leading person on the ticket, right? JD Vance is supposed to make Kamala look like a communist, Marxist, evil person, and Tim Walz is supposed to remind people about Donald Trump. Tim Walz landed shots on Donald Trump. They talked about the eating the cats thing. They talked about abortion. They talked about the election. He landed shot after shot about Donald Trump. He even used, you just talked about the compliments. He used the compliments as almost a back door to say, hey, we agree, but the person leading your ticket doesn't agree, right? He used Vance as a way to attack Trump. And let me tell you something, John. When you're the vice presidential nominee, and this comes out of your mouth at the debate, I disagree with a lot of what Trump did in his first term. When you get the nominee to say that about his own presidential nominee, you win, right? Tim Walz got him to say, I disagree with a lot of what Trump did in his first administration. That's a win to me, right? You also talked about the fact that Tim Walz was complimenting him. One, JD Vance was also complimenting Tim Walz, right? Granted, later on, he kind of, they left, he kind of took shots at him, right? But something that struck me about the Kamala debate was the handshake, and people thought it was a power move and all that good stuff, and it was. But there's a lot of people middle of the road who were tired of the mudslinging, were tired of the name calling, and the fact that she went over there despite everything he said about her and shook his hand. I think again, it doesn't make people switch votes, but it gives people some. Okay, I think she's in it for the right reasons, and I think it calms people's nerves about the mudslinging and the name calling. Remember in 2020, John, people just wanted a normal president, like not someone who was having 3 p.m. daily briefings, taking shots at the media, taking shots at leaders on Twitter, saying I hate Taylor Swift, et cetera, et cetera. People don't want that. People truly don't want that. And for Tim Walz to be able to look at JD Vance and say we agree there, I think was very effective. The last point, we talked about the election and how it painted them in a bad light. But what I also thought was it was a way to open the door. For instance, Trump tweeted about it, and then he had a rally a couple of days ago. We're recording this on Sunday, but I think he had a rally on Friday where all he talked about was the election and how they won and it was rigged. And people don't want to hear that. Trump's campaign manager was on either Fox or MSNBC or whatever it was, and wouldn't commit to saying the 2020 election wasn't rigged. The Speaker of the House is on either CNN or whatever it is right now as we're speaking. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is on an interview saying that he refusing to say that the 2020 election was won by Joe Biden. So it wasn't that moment that led to everything. It's almost like the door was ripped open, and now you get to bring it up every single time, right? And if these interviewers could ask them every single time, the more and more the 2020 election on January 6th is in people's brains, the better it is for Kamala and Democrats. And I think that's why that debate moment was successful, because it brought it up in the moment and then it kept it going. Because now every single person, every single Republican is kind of being asked about it, and that's very effective.